Welcome to day one of our pre-recorded video. In this lesson or in this class, my goal is to show you how you can believe in your own power. And the best way for us to get started is by doing something really simple. Because when we start small and we start simple, it's actually a lot easier for us to feel small little wins and success that helps us to grow that belief within us. Now, I want to just let you know what you're going to be getting in this pre-recorded class. We are going to be going through how you are going to be putting paint to paper. So we're going to be doing a wet in dry technique and specifically a front-facing flower. This is what the class will be walking you through. However, I encourage you to stretch beyond that. Take a look at the reference photos if you like. Think about how you can try out different references where you've got flowers in different directions if you feel up for it. And try out different colors of Cosmo flowers. You don't have to paint in the same color. And just to remind you, when we think about our belief in our superpower, it's really about thinking about what we can do and listening to your own internal limiting beliefs that might be holding you back. Now, superheroes also have limiting beliefs. They have fears too. They're human. Well, they're superhuman, I know, but they have got different things that they're afraid of, even though one of the biggest things that they do is to exercise courage and just jump for it or go for it. But I believe that all superheroes also do have days where they doubt themselves, they're unsure of what they can do, and upon reflection of your own limitations, your own beliefs, that's going to really open up for you what exactly might be a roadblock when it comes to you believing in your own superpower. So here are some things that I want you to reflect on in day one. Number one, think about how it feels like to hold your brush. Your brush is basically an extension of your arm. Think about the different movements that come with painting. Whether you're pulling it towards you or moving it away from you, ask yourself how it feels like to be creating something from nothing. Because that really is quite a superpower, isn't it? The next thing I want you to reflect on is I want you to think about the way in which paint moves on paper. Now, all of these questions are definitely leaning into your experience as you are painting, and I think this reflective process is going to help you to be more grounded and to focus on what exactly is happening and the experience instead of the outcome. Now, the last question that I want you to think about is the things that run through your head as you are painting. Now, as superheroes, one of the worries that we might have is that we might get in our own way, and that tends to happen. I want you to start injecting or think of a mantra that can help you to encourage your process and encourage kindness towards yourself as you are doing this. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything. If anything, you need to just give it a go and kind of lean into what is happening so that you can start increasing the amount of belief in your own superpower. So for day one, we're wrapping up with just helping you to kind of grow your belief in your own superpower, and I hope that this is going to help you to hone in more than just skills, but also your experience in watercolor. Welcome to day one of our retreat. My goal for you is to learn how to just get started with painting flowers. Now, I'm going to be using a couple of different types of brushes to help you to see the possibilities of how we're just going to be putting paint to paper. Starting with my large round brush. This is a Princeton Heritage round size 16, I'm going to be wetting the brush thoroughly. Now this entire video is in real time, so take your time to really do the painting. Don't forget to hold your brush in a way that is comfortable and not too tight. We are going to be focusing on painting a front-facing Cosmo flower, and because the petals are all pretty thin, so what you see me doing is I'm pulling my brush towards the center of the flower and I'm going around. Now I want to encourage you to vary the thickness of these strokes and also vary how much water you have in your brush, because if you have more water on your brush, you're going to get lighter marks as compared to if you have more paint, which is why you can see that at some points I actually add in paint while that stroke is still wet, because it allows me to create some blends and bleeds. I also use the tip of my brush to draw some lines, and this is the thing about painting loosely. You don't have to paint every single petal in a symmetric way. In fact, try and use different parts of your brush to achieve these strokes. And you slowly go around until you are done with your full front-facing Cosmo shape. I like taking advantage of the paper while it's still wet, so I'm eyeballing certain parts and I see that there are parts that are still wet. I go in and charge in some pigments. Now depending on how wet your paper is, it could blend and move rapidly or it could just move a little. It's really up to you, because this is how you actually identify how paints move on paper depending on how wet your paper is. Now if your paper is damp, of course it's not going to move as rapidly as when your paper is soaking wet. So keep in mind some of these ideas when you are charging in paints. And I want you to notice that I didn't actually put in extra pigment all over. In fact, I'm just putting in certain spots. Now I am putting in a darker center color this time, and what I did is I used my blues and I've dabbed in a little bit of red, which is a complementary color. And what I want to do is I want to get a duller version of that blue so that it is going to be a little bit more muted and it's going to be a little darker than the blue that I currently am using on the petals. At this stage, you also want to ask yourself if your center is still wet. If it is, there's a chance that that color is going to bleed. Mine is currently pretty dry, which is why you see that the color is not moving. In fact, it's just staying put on the paper. And this is your classic wet in dry technique when your paints are not really moving. And then there are spots that are still slightly damp, and that's where I dab in a little bit because I want to get a bit of bleed. Now, I love painting in more than one layer. I know I said I wanted to just focus on one layer, but I find that when you paint in more than one layer, like when you're charging paints like what I did, you actually create a lot more depth to your flower. Let's try using my favorite brush, which is a stroke brush. This is from Prince Aqua Elite and it's a 1/2 inch stroke brush. I'm going to be using a similar color, or maybe I should use a different color. So something a little bit more purple and pink so that you can see a differentiation between the marks, especially when you are going back to see the two different types of brush shapes that you have used. Now, if you don't have a 1/2 inch stroke brush or flat brush, try a brush that is of a different shape. Could be a filbert brush, or you could even use a smaller round brush. The whole point of this exercise is for you to see how using different brush shapes, different brush sizes when you are doing wet in dry is going to give you different types of marks. I'm using the same strategy where I would vary the amount of water on my brush to get lighter strokes, and sometimes I'm also pulling from the center outwards just to get a sense of how it feels like when I am putting paint to paper. I think one of the elements in developing your style is really about understanding how it feels like to move with the tools that you're having, and that's your brush. Now I'm also charging in some paints now. I can see that there are some petals that are quite light and I want to add a little bit more pigment to it so there is a little bit more volume to my flower. Again, eyeball how wet your flower is because you don't want your flower to be too wet. Now I want you to pay attention to how I am using my brush in a way where I don't go over the same stroke over and over again. In fact, I just use one clean swooping stroke and then I move on to the next stroke. The reason is this is so that you actually let those brush strokes speak for you rather than try and do a lot of dabbing marks. This actually makes a lot more difference, especially if you want your florals to look more lively. We have completed 2 front-facing flowers and we use a round brush and a flat brush for us to achieve that. Now I thought to end off today's session, it would be so fun for us to just do half a flower, and in this half we're going to do a wet in dry flower, which is exactly what we're doing today in day 1. I'm using my round brush and you can use whichever brush you like, depending on which one you prefer the most. And I'm going to do it in blue because it was blue color that I used my round brush. I'm just going to be putting down the same strategy where I'm pulling from the outside in. I'm varying the amount of water I have on my brush, and I am also charging in paint where it is still wet and you can see the paint moving. I really like to do that, especially in the center of the flower, because I find that's where most of the time you get shadows in your flowers. And then I'm just going to go all around, pulling towards that imaginary center, varying my amount of water on my brush, and really just taking my time. Sometimes I can also do lifting, where I would dab off excess water and lift the paint, which is what you see here. And when I do that, I'm actually revealing a petal that is in front of the other petal that you can see that's at the back. Now take your time to do this, and you don't have to paint every petal. You can see that there were some portions where I just made some marks, and again, allow the brush strokes to kind of speak for itself. Now we have kind of done half of the flower this time, and I'm just really going close to the line because tomorrow what we're going to be doing is we're going to be focusing on wet in wet. So today was a focus on wet in dry, and we're doing front-facing flowers. This is usually stage 1 in when you're trying out painting flowers. If you're totally brand new to watercolor, this is the best way to start just because it is very easy. It is also the way that most of us start off with, which is just putting paint to paper, where we're not really familiar with how to use water on our paper and our paints. So now I'm going to work on the center, and this time I'm also adding in a little bit of purple, so I'm darkening that blue again. And you can see as I'm dabbing the center, it is a lot darker and duller, and that's also because I have less water on my brush. I hope that you've enjoyed day 1 with this very simple exercise. I cannot wait to explore with you wet in wet tomorrow, because this time it's going to get a lot messier, and that's when the fun really comes in. Hey, did you just finish day 1? Now it was a really short video, and beyond the painting and what you've come up with, don't forget to keep repeating and trying out the same technique. You can do more than one flower. Now the whole point of this is to keep strengthening that belief that you have in your superpower. I would love for you to not just share your artwork in our Facebook group, but for you to also let me know what did you discover about your superpower, or even what is your superpower. Let me know in the Facebook group so that all of us can share, celebrate, or even relate to some of the struggles that you might be facing. If you have got any questions, this is where our live session comes in, and I cannot wait for you to come in and let me know what some of your questions are. You can also pre-submit questions in the Facebook group if you've got questions about the videos. Let me know in the comments, And at the same time, don't forget that this is all a journey and a practice. If you find that this feels hard, it is hard. I want you to also watch the artist passage where I'm sharing with you my journey as I go through my watercolor self-taught journey and the various milestones. Now, don't forget to check out the various PDFs. We have got a terminology test. Take the test and have fun with it. And then upcoming is going to be your artist passage. So it will help you to identify which level or where you are at in your own milestone journey. And I hope that this also carves the way for you to think about your belief in your own superpower. I'll see you in day 2.